Bob Kerr gave me the honored privilege to introduce a dear friend of mine. 16 years. When I first saw him at my church in Van Alstyne, I greeted him, found out his name was Andy, until we discovered that our active, reserved, and retired positions in the military. The common greeting in person was no longer "Hi, Andy and Jack," but rather it was "Good morning, Colonel," "Good morning, Master Chief." This dear friend is our next speaker, and he's known as Lieutenant Colonel Andrew F. Bouma. Colonel Bouma joined military in 1984, and he was assigned to the famed 101st Airborne Division. He graduated OCS in 1985, and from that point on, the list of military accomplishments and assignments get very blurry and lengthy. The highlights are Battalion Logistics Officer, Company Executive Officer, Battalion Operations Officer, Company Commander, and Assistant Professor of Military Science. I didn't know that. Assistant Professor of Military Science. In 1997, Captain Bouma joined the Army Reserves, where he served as Lanes Training Team Chief and Battalion Officer. In 2003, Major Bouma was called to active duty and served at Fort Hood as Battalion Operations Officer during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Lieutenant Colonel Bouma retired in 2008 with 25 years of distinguished service. His awards and decorations go on for days. Lieutenant Colonel Bouma is currently a supportability engineer for Raytheon Company in Dallas and is an adjunct professor for the Lyle School of Engineering at SMU. I also must add that he is pastor to special needs adults at Chase Oaks Church in Plano. And he currently resides in the Plano area with his wife Lisa and son Scott. Please welcome warmly Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Bouma.
I'm always worried when Jack pulls out a piece of paper that isn't already out here, what he's going to say. Good afternoon, distinguished guests. What an honor and a privilege it is to be here today. I was telling Master Sergeant Evans that I don't think I've been to a Veterans Appreciation Program with as many veterans in one room. What an honor. As I contemplated what I wanted to speak about today, I kept coming back to the thought of how being a veteran has shaped me into who I am today. As I prepared, I started a list of terms or names that describe me as a person, me in my professional life and my military experience. Many of these terms have defined me over the years, roles I've had, responsibilities I've taken on. Just a few of them, and many of these apply to you. Personally, a son, a brother, an uncle, husband, grandfather, father, Christian, volunteer. Professionally, college student, now an engineer, manager, team leader, and adjunct professor. Military, a basic trainee, an aircraft repairman and crew chief of the 101st, an officer candidate, a lieutenant, infantry officer, quartermaster officer, captain, commander, a major, lieutenant colonel, a leader, a retiree, and a veteran. Some of the responsibilities were limited by time, others will stay with me for eternity. As a basic trainee for 8 weeks. I was an officer candidate for 91 days. College student, 4 years for my bachelor's, 3 more for my master's. Been an engineer for 20 years. I've been a husband for 33 as of yesterday. And a father to an awesome daughter and son who's sitting here in the front row, but also a veteran, a soldier for 32 plus years. I've been a veteran. Each one of these roles and responsibilities have shaped my life, honored my character, honed my character, and made me into who I am. But one stands out that's having the greatest impact on making me a leader. A leader in my home, a leader in my workplace, and in my community and my church, and that is veteran. God knew what he was doing way back in the fall of 1983 when he called me into Army service, when I raised my right hand and committed to serving my country. So help me God. I owe a lot to my father-in-law. My father-in-law, Don Poole, an Army recruiter at the time, and a veteran of the Vietnam War. He's the one that recruited me. I'm so very thankful. My years in the Army were not easy, although I did not serve overseas in a combat zone like many of you did, and I'm honored to stand here with you today. My years on active duty were challenging in many ways. For those who have served in one or more of these campaigns, such as Vietnam, World War II, Iraq, or Afghanistan, thank you. If you are the spouse of a military member or grew up in a family whose parents served, would you stand? If you are a spouse or in a family, thank you. Your support helped us get through the tough times. I remember calling my wife from officers. Husband, not like me saying this, but I remember calling my wife from Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia in the mid-'80s. I don't remember my exact words, maybe she does, but I gave her just a long list of reasons to leave. I wanted to come home. It was tough, it was challenging. I'd had enough, and I was tired physically and emotionally. I was tired of doing push-ups in the middle of the night, getting yelled at in the dining facility, things that I look back on are pretty simple. I was tired of tromping through the swamps of South Georgia. Many of you have been through those in Dahlonega, Georgia. But Lisa told me not to give up, that I could do it. Most of all, she said, I think these are pretty close to what she said, don't come home until you are wearing those gold bars of a lieutenant. Right then and there, I was determined to finish OCS. I knew I could do it, and with Lisa's encouragement and God's help. And boy, did I need God's help. I made one of the best decisions in my life. I stayed and I finished what I started. I will always be grateful for the 25 years I served in the Army, service that strengthened my character, gave me the skills to succeed in business, years that instilled in me a sense of service, or what I call servant leadership. And Sergeant Evans and I really didn't coordinate, but he mentioned the term servant leadership. While in the Army, I served my superiors, I served the soldiers under my command, and I served my country. My 3 years as a battalion operations officer and company commander in the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii were also some of the most challenging in my career. I was responsible for hundreds of men and women who looked to me for leadership, guidance, counsel, and oftentimes their daily needs. A company commander can be characterized as a father, a mother, a pastor, and ultimately a servant leader. These two were difficult years, putting a lot of stress on my family. But again, with God's help, I chose to do my duty with all my strength and might. I chose to grow from the experience and let it mold my character. The servant leadership character has spilled over into my personal life as well. It has affected the way I serve my church, leading teams of missionaries into Mexico with Jack, or the way I serve the special needs community in which I live, volunteering with nonprofit organizations that meet the needs of the families affected by disabilities. Each experience in my life has prepared me for what God has called me to do. That is to be a servant leader, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. The other day I read a blog post by Joy Havens titled "Serve, Then Lead," published on October 28th. Joy speaks about this term, servant leadership. I believe that before anyone can lead, they must authentically serve others. This means serving in a manner that meets the needs of others, not themselves. This builds the trust that you must have to lead. Anyone that serves only themselves will not be a successful leader. The more we are able to meet the needs of others, the more opportunities we have to lead. Our influence grows. The big disconnect I see for many leaders is that once they gain a leadership role, they stop serving, or they begin to serve themselves first. This always leads to a downfall. As our leadership grows, we must serve even more. There are greater needs to be met, and usually more people to serve, end quote. Wow. I said, this man really gets it. Leaders serve others. As our leadership grows, we have the opportunity to serve more. There are many leaders that have influenced my life over the years, including Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is a perfect example of a servant leader. In Matthew chapter 20, verses 26 to 28 of the NIV version, Jesus states, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Through his 3 years of ministry, Christ ministered to many people, healing the sick and showing compassion and love for the downtrodden. This while not having personal possessions outside of his daily needs. We can all learn from Christ's example, especially me. 2 other leaders that have influenced my life are seated in the chairs behind me. I've served in the community with Master Chief Jack Wallace, the pastor of this church and a Navy veteran. Jack taught me a lot about being a servant leader. While he was pastor of our church in Van Alstyne, he taught me what it was like to serve a congregation of believers, how to pastor to their needs. He taught me how to meet the needs of individuals experiencing extreme poverty as we organized and led missionary teams in Mexico. Pastor Jack is a great example of a veteran servant leader, one who continues to serve communities all over North Texas. Thank you, Master Chief. I've served with Master Sergeant Lamar Evans while a member of the Army Reserves, and while called to active duty at Fort Hood, Texas in 2003. Master Sergeant Evans is another great example of a veteran servant leader, an individual who continues to volunteer and serve his community. I witnessed firsthand his commitment to the soldiers of the 75th Division during a reserve active duty deployment at Fort Hood. As a senior non-commissioned officer, he taught me how to lead, how to serve a battalion of reserve soldiers responsible for training National Guard soldiers prior to their deployment into Iraq and Afghanistan. If you listen carefully to Sergeant Evans' bio, you would see that he is an active member of Team Rubicon, a team of servant leaders that unite the skills and experiences of military veterans and first responders to rapidly deploy emergency teams in response of humanitarian relief, earthquakes, floods, and other natural disasters all over the United States and other countries. Now that is an example of a servant leader. Thank you, Sergeant. Many of you participate in Patriot Guard Riders, an organization whose mission it is to ensure dignity and respect at memorial services honoring fallen military heroes, first responders, and honorably discharged veterans. This is another great example of a servant leadership, giving your time and resources to honor our veterans and their families. I've attended many funeral services for veterans. My heart swells with pride as I see how you honored their service and sacrifice. Thank you. I've celebrated many of these roles, special days throughout the year. My birthday, my wedding anniversary, which we celebrated yesterday, the birth of my son Scott and Nina, and my daughter Nina. Another day that I look forward to every year is Veterans Day. I'm honored to be called a vet, honored to serve my country, and thankful for the leaders that have shaped my character and taught me what it means to be a servant leader. I'm proud to be part of this country and the local community that honors its veterans. I'm proud to be part of this event that honors you, all of the veterans and families standing and seated before me today. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your service. Now I challenge everyone that if you're not already involved in an organization, to look for an opportunity to serve the local communities, opportunities to volunteer, make a difference in the lives of those in need. You won't regret it. You know what it means to serve. You know what it means to lead. Bringing these two attributes together as we serve together as veterans in our communities will bring honor and dignity to the sacrifices others have made while in uniform. In closing, veterans, thank you for your service. We honor you today. To the families of our veterans, thank you for your support and your sacrifice. For without your support, we would certainly not have succeeded. To our community, thank you for coming out today. You honor us with your presence and your support. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. May God bless you as you become a servant leader He's called you to be. Thank you, and God bless America.